Welcome to another movie plot and enjoy the memories. Set in a dystopian future controlled by the faceless corporation Mentel, worldwide famine means that married couples are permitted to get pregnant only once in their lifetimes, whether the baby survives the delivery or not. Anyone caught on their second pregnancy sits in a Mentel-operated jail cell for 9 months until they claim the baby as their property and execute the mother. John Brennick and his pregnant wife Karen have had one failed pregnancy already, so they're attempting to escape to Canada to try again. Needing to get through the security checkpoint, Karen wears a flak jacket allowing her to hide her stomach. But just when they think that they've made it, one of the guards notices its collar and attempts to arrest them. The former Black Beret captain and his wife fend them off and race across the bridge towards the border. But John chooses to remain behind and take a mauling from the guard dogs, allowing Karen to cross over into Canada. Having accomplished his mission, John's arrested and transported to a maximum security prison in the middle of the desert for 3 decades. A claustrophobic prisoner can't understand why he's so happy about his sentence, but John says that it is because at least his wife got away. They arrive at the penitentiary, which appears invisible from a distance as it's just a giant hole in the ground. Called the Fortress, it's a 33-story deep facility operated by the same oppressive corporation that makes all of the inmates strip naked before ushering them underground. Mentel's appointed director of the facility, Poe, issues the new arrivals warnings before having a behavioral control device called an intestinator forcibly inserted down each one of their throats. Any minor offenses will result in abdominal pain, while more serious punishment will come in the form of instant death or being mind-wiped into a vegetable. John witnesses this happen soon after when the claustrophobic prisoner becomes hysterical and crosses a yellow safe zone, causing extreme pain. He then continues to drag himself across the red one, causing the intestinator to activate again and his abdomen explodes. John meets his roommate Gomez before the two are taken almost to the ground level to be put into general population with some of the worst inmates on earth. Their cell's already full and the dim-witted Stiggs isn't happy about sharing, but he fears the prison's ever-watching control system Z10. He has the new guests sleep on the floor while the beds are reserved for the explosives expert Dday, who was caught after a botched heist. And the quiet Abe, who's the director's housekeeper and does it so well that despite all of the parole recommendations, Poe doesn't intend to ever let him leave. On his first night inside, John has a dream about Karen, but Poe's able to use Zed to read people's minds and intestinates him awake as punishment. The next day, John's sent to the ground level of the prison, where they're forced to work on expanding the facility and turned into ghosts if they don't comply. He hears Gomez getting attacked and with a single swing knocks out the lookout Stiggs, but his hulking friend's unfazed by them. Maddox is about to strangle John, who held his own at first but is subdued by the director with intestination and made to stand for hours. John and Gomez are right beside him, where they're burned in their little laser cages until one of them confesses to instigating the fight. Getting weak and unable to stand much longer, John can see that Gomez is about to confess, so he does it first to receive the punishment. He's taken to the director himself to hear that John was the most decorated captain in history before he retired in disgrace after getting his whole squad killed. He reveals that Karen got captured at the border also and has been sent to the women's jail on the upper levels of the fortress. Poe then gives both John and his wife further intestination as punishment before sending him back to his cell to sleep it off. The next day, Maddox attacks John, kicking him down the stairs and attempts to shove his head into one of the lasers, but John reverses his hand into it instead. He's then almost thrown down to the construction level but climbs up again, and they continue the fight, which leaves them both bloody and battered. Poe's watching the whole thing and delays stopping the fight to retract a walkway, hoping that John will be thrown over to his death. But he bests Maddox, who's knocked off the walkway, where he hangs on by a single hand. Poe announces that the big guy's been subject for termination and orders John over the intercom to finish him off. So John defies his orders by pulling Maddox up, saving his life and ending the fight. Karen has been watching from the women's prison but isn't able to make out the faces until hearing the crowd chanting her own last name and realizing that it's John. The rescue was all for nothing, as Poe sends a new powerful weapon he calls the splattergun to blow Maddox's abdomen apart. He falls off dying while all of the other prisoners are punished just for Poe's amusement, but John notices Maddox's intestinator lying next to him, so he takes it. Abe respects his new cellmate for his restraint against his attacker, while John passes off the device to Gomez while he's taken to isolation. Dday and Gomez have all the confidence in the world to tell Stiggs that his bed belongs to John now that Maddox isn't around to torment them. Meanwhile, John's strapped to a gimbal, but before he's punished, Poe sends Karen to plead with him that he needs to behave. But she just tells him to cause whatever chaos he wants, as it won't stop her from ever loving him. John then gets physically tortured as the gimbal spins him around rapidly while getting it mentally, as Zed bombards his senses with hallucinations. Like most women upstairs, Karen's cellmates preggers and speaks about wanting to see her child when it arrives, but she won't ever get the chance. A team of doctors is sent to extract it while Karen fights them off, but the woman's recaptured and taken away to be dissected. Poe's become attracted to Karen, and after 3 days of torture he makes a deal to release John under the condition that she lives with him in his apartment. She begrudgingly agrees, and John's returned to his cell in a catatonic state, as it only takes 4 days in the machine to receive a complete mind wipe. Abraham takes care of the ghostly John as weeks turn into months, until one day Karen finds Poe hooked up by leads to Zed. Every 30 days he refuels on amino acids, as he reveals himself to be a cyborg created by Mantell to solve the food shortage problem. Poe was the first newborn stolen from their mother, as the corporation plans to replace the entire human race with more efficient people, one baby at a time. One night Karen seduces Poe with spiked champagne and uses Zed to enter John's mind, where he's a little boy trapped in a hole and needs help getting out. She's able to encourage her vegetable husband enough to break out of his catatonia, and the cyborg's none the wiser about it when he wakes up. The next morning John's cellmates wake to the sound of his voice for the first time in 4 months, and he's devastated to learn that Karen's living with his torturer. He figures that at least it's close to the escape, and convinces Abraham to deliver a message that he's planning to break out and needs her help. While the director's distracted, Karen swipes the lens of a holographic projector which shows construction plans for the future prison levels. She gives it to Abraham to take back to his cell, where Dday uses his glasses to refract one of the laser bars through it, revealing the blueprint. John comes up with a plan to escape through a ventilation shaft where they all work, but when the lens gets too hot, Dday drops it outside of the cell. Needing to return it later to throw off suspicions, John reaches out and retrieves it, only taking a nick from the laser and not being spotted by Zed. The lens gets smudged while Abraham's returning it, so the director can tell that it's been messed with and blames Karen. Abe confesses that it was accidentally knocked off while he was cleaning the table, and risks his own chance at ever getting paroled by the threatening Poe. He then overhears the director propose to Karen with the offer of raising her child safely and allowing John to walk free from the prison. Abe reports this back to John, who's tasked Dday with repairing Maddox's intestinator for the past few days and discover a way to remove them. He learns they're magnetic, so Stiggs volunteers as a test subject to see if they can pull their own out through their mouths. It causes him a great deal of pain, but they manage to get it to work and all free themselves from Poe's control, including Abe, who's come to realize that after 40 long years of good behavior he's never going to be granted a parole. All of it makes John nervous, who hasn't led a team since his one in the army was slaughtered, but the cellmates assure him that they're doing it for themselves. Meanwhile, Zed reveals that Karen was actually the one who stole the lens and holds Poe accountable for allowing the violations of Mantell policies. A replacement director gets ordered and Poe's confided to his quarters, but he's never even stepped foot out of his office his whole life anyway. When the inmates report for work next, Dday places all of the intestinators he's extracted on one of the ventilation pipes to the outside. John and Stiggs begin another brawl to get their intestinators activated, but when Zed orders the prisoners to be punished, it mentions Maddox's name. Realizing why his device is among them, Poe pleads with Zed not to set them off, but the computer ignores him, blowing a hole in the duct to the outside. John and his crew make for the exit, so Zed concedes and opens the door to restore Poe's control and find a way to catch the inmates. He opens steam vents to force the convicts back to the opening, where Stiggs tries to escape in the other direction, but his face is badly burned. Not wanting to boil alive in there, he attempts to re-enter the prison but is shot dead by a heavily armed cyborg called a Cyclone. The cybernetic soldier enters the vent, but John manages to beat him to death with a shovel, exposing what's left of the former prisoner's face. John chops off the gun built into its arm, and they make a dash through the fortress, with John mowing down the enhanced guards along the way. One of them trips over Dday that he spins around and kills with a pickaxe, but he breaks his glasses in the process and gets separated from the team. He's about to be shot by a clone from one side and the splatter gun from the other, but John tackles him out of the way and the cyborgs splattered everywhere. Without their intestinators, the gun's unable to lock on to John Gomez and Dday, so they're able to ride its carriage to the top level as it returns to its base. Karen and Abe leave to join the others, but Poe catches them and tries to activate Abe's intestinator, but he just laughs and tosses it away. He's surprised to find that his punches have no effect on the enhanced human, who strangles Abe to death even while Karen's stabbing him in the back with a shard of glass. By the time John arrives, they find Abe dead while Karen's already been taken to an operating room where doctors prepare to remove the baby. With a gun to his head, the director agrees to call off the procedure, but Zed doesn't acknowledge the order and says that they don't give in to terrorist demands. When the four attempt to stop it manually, Zed sends the splattergun to target Poe, and it blows the mostly robotic cyborg to pieces. John and Gomez return to the control room, where Dday attempts to install a virus on Zed as the surgeons are about to start cutting into Karen. More strike clones arrive and shoot Dday dead, but not before he activates the virus, shutting down the lights in the operating room and delaying the doctors. All of the cyborgs begin malfunctioning alongside everything else electronic in the fortress, primarily Zed's security system. A riot breaks out while John rescues Karen, and they escape with Gomez in the same prison transport that brought them there. They flee the compound but don't get far when Karen goes into labor, requiring them to pull over at an abandoned barn where she can give birth. While the couple are inside, the truck suddenly activates as Zed's still in control and runs down Gomez, killing him before crashing into the barn. Karen's left inside to continue giving birth while John goes out with the cyborg's weapon to battle with the truck. He destroys the camera with his last bullet and sets it on fire with a flamethrower, causing it to swerve into the barn and completely consume it in a large explosion. Believing his wife and child died in the blast, John begins to hear his baby crying and locates Karen alive, having escaped the barn. And the movie ends.